Sarah's hands trembled as she smoothed down her navy dress for the third time. 27 failed dating app conversations had led to exactly 0 actual dates. But something about David's profile had been different. His eyes held a sadness she recognized, the kind that comes from surviving something that changes you forever. When he'd suggested meeting at the Children's Museum instead of a coffee shop, she'd almost declined. Almost. But there was something in his message. I promise it'll make sense when we meet. Now, standing in the lobby surrounded by the squeals of excited children, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The thing about rock bottom is that you don't realize you've hit it until you're already climbing back up. Sarah had found her rock bottom 3 months ago, sitting in an empty apartment after her engagement imploded, surrounded by unopened wedding invitations and a future that had evaporated overnight. Her fiancé had left a note on the kitchen counter. I'm not ready to be a father. I'm not sure I ever will. B. The positive pregnancy test she'd been holding turned into a -1 a week later, and just like that, she'd lost everything she thought her life would be. A little girl's laughter cut through her spiraling thoughts. Sarah turned to see a man crouched down, adjusting a tiny purple backpack on a child who couldn't have been more than 4 years old. The little girl had dark curls that bounced as she nodded enthusiastically at whatever her father was saying. When he stood up, Sarah's breath caught. It was David. He looked different from his photos, older, more tired, but somehow more real. When his eyes met hers across the crowded lobby, something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but something softer. An understanding, maybe. Sarah? He walked toward her, his daughter's small hand wrapped tightly in his. I'm David, and this is Emma. Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. She nodded instead, managing what she hoped looked like a welcoming smile. The silence stretched between them, awkward and thick. This was it. The moment where she should make polite small talk, laugh at something witty he'd say, begin the careful dance of getting to know someone. But the words stuck in her throat like they had for the past 3 months. Ever since she'd stopped being able to see the point of small talk, of pretending that everything was fine, of building futures that could crumble in an instant. David's smile faltered. I know this is unconventional. I should have explained better in my messages. Emma's been asking to come here for weeks, and my babysitter canceled last minute, and I thought maybe. He ran his free hand through his hair. This was a mistake. I'm sorry. He turned to leave and Sarah felt panic flood her chest. She'd driven 45 minutes. She'd put on makeup for the first time in weeks. She'd tried, but her voice remained trapped. Prisoner to all the things she couldn't say, couldn't feel, couldn't be anymore. That's when she felt it, a tiny hand slipping into hers. Emma had let go of her father and was now holding Sarah's hand, looking up at her with eyes the color of honey. The little girl's hand was impossibly small, warm, and sticky with what appeared to be remnants of a lollipop. Sarah looked down, stunned. Are you my new mommy? The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. The lobby seemed to tilt. Around them, families continued their joyful chaos. Children running, parents chasing, siblings arguing over who got to see the dinosaur exhibit first. But in their small corner, time had stopped. David's face drained of color. Emma, no. Sweetheart, we talked about this. But Emma wasn't listening. She squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, her little face earnest and hopeful, in a way that shattered something deep in Sarah's chest. I've been waiting for you. Daddy said I'd know when I met you. Are you her? Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes. This child, this beautiful, innocent child, was asking her the one question she'd been asked to answer 3 months ago and had failed. The one role she'd been told she was supposed to want more than anything, and then had that possibility ripped away before she could even hold it. She should let go. She should make an excuse and leave. She should protect herself from this moment that was cracking open, everything she'd tried so hard to keep buried. Instead, she knelt down, eye to eye with Emma. Sarah could see the little girl's expectant expression, could see the hope radiating from her like sunlight, and behind that hope, she recognized something else, the same kind of loss she carried, just packaged in a smaller, more resilient frame. Sarah's voice, unused for so many painful weeks in any way that mattered, finally broke free. I'm Sarah, she managed, her throat tight. And I think I think I'm just someone who really needed to meet you today. Emma tilted her head, considering this. Then, with the brutal honesty only a 4-year-old can manage, she said, "You look sad. Like Daddy gets sometimes, when he thinks I'm sleeping, but I'm not." David made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Emma, honey, you can't just—" "It's okay," Sarah interrupted, surprising herself. She looked up at David, really looked at him, and saw everything he hadn't said in his dating profile. The single father navigating a world that expected him to have it all together. The man trying to be both parents to a little girl who deserved the world. The person who, like her, was probably just trying to survive each day while pretending to everyone else that surviving was the same as living. "I am sad," Sarah said, turning back to Emma. "But you know what? Meeting you is making it a little bit better." Emma's face lit up like fireworks. "Then you can come see the butterflies with us. They just opened a new exhibit, and Daddy says if you stand really still, they land on you. Have you ever had a butterfly land on you?" Sarah shook her head, still holding this tiny hand that somehow felt like an anchor keeping her from drifting away completely. "Then you have to come." Emma was already pulling her toward the entrance. "Daddy, come on. Sarah needs to see the butterflies." David looked at Sarah with an expression that was equal parts apologetic and grateful. "We don't have to—" "I'd like to see the butterflies," Sarah heard herself say, and meant it. The butterfly exhibit was housed in a climate-controlled atrium, warm and humid, filled with plants and flowers in vibrant colors. Butterflies of every size and pattern floated through the air like living confetti. Emma had been right. If you stood still enough, they would land on you. One landed on Sarah's shoulder, its delicate wings opening and closing in a gentle rhythm. Emma watched it with reverence, her voice dropping to a whisper. "See? They can tell you're nice. They only land on nice people. Is that so?" Sarah whispered back. "Mm-hmm. A mean person would scare them away." Emma reached out but didn't touch. Just let her fingers hover near the butterfly. "My mommy loved butterflies. Daddy showed me pictures." The air shifted. David stiffened beside them. "She's in heaven now," Emma continued matter-of-factly. "She got really sick when I was a baby. I don't remember her, but Daddy tells me stories. He says she would have loved me so much." She looked up at Sarah. "Do you think people in heaven can see butterflies too?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for months. This child, who had lost her mother before she could even remember her, was asking her, a stranger, one of life's impossible questions. And somehow, kneeling in this warm room full of butterflies, Sarah found she had an answer. "I think," she said slowly, "that heaven is probably full of the most beautiful butterflies you've ever seen. And I think your mommy is watching you right now, seeing how kind and brave you are, and she's so proud." Emma considered this, then nodded with the satisfied certainty of a child who'd received the exact answer she needed. "That's what I think too." She turned to her father. "Daddy, can Sarah come to lunch with us, please?" David met Sarah's eyes over Emma's head. In that look, she saw everything: the apology for his daughter's forward question, the grief he carried, the fear of hoping for something that might hurt, and beneath it all a question of his own. Sarah nodded. Just a small movement, but it meant everything. Lunch turned into dinner. Dinner turned into walks through the park, while Emma collected special rocks that looked exactly like every other rock. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months where Sarah found herself learning the words to Disney songs she'd never heard before, attending pre-K graduation ceremonies, and discovering that maybe the future she'd lost wasn't the only one possible. The thing about rock bottom is that sometimes it's not an ending, it's a clearing away of everything that wasn't meant for you, making space for what was. 9 months after a little girl took her hand and asked an impossible question, Sarah stood in the same butterfly exhibit, but this time Emma was wearing a flower crown and holding both her hand and her father's. And this time when Emma asked, "Are you my new mommy?" part ceremony, part pure joy, Sarah could answer with absolute certainty, "I am, I really am." The butterflies swirled around them like a blessing, and for the first time in over a year, Sarah understood that sometimes the families we build are even more beautiful than the ones we planned. Sometimes love arrives in the form of a child's sticky hand, and a man brave enough to show up with his whole messy, beautiful truth. Sometimes silence isn't empty, it's just waiting for the right voice to fill it. And sometimes That voice belongs to a 4-year-old girl who believes in butterflies, heaven, and the magic of people who look sad but might just need someone to hold their hand.